Welcome to everyone to our first webinar in the DCR Summer Series. I'll be your host this evening, and we will be outlining the benefits of the Social Equity Program and answering your questions about these programs. Our goal for this summer series is to close the information gap regarding the program and benefits. My name is Dr. Brown, and I would first like to introduce our team members and those joining us who are present this evening. We have Kat Packer, who is our Executive Director for DCR, Jason Killeen, who is the Assistant Director, Executive Director for DCR, myself, I'm the Social Equity Program Director, Allison Toll, our Senior Project Coordinator, Catherine Smith-Ball, our Management Analyst, Ethan Spalding, our Management Assistant. We have Josh Mandel, who's the Chair of the LA County Bar Association's Cannabis Section, and Paula Groves, our CEO for Elevate Impact LA. Next slide, please. Our overview for tonight's meeting. We will have a social equity program overview. We will move forward with licensing information and the application process. We will have information regarding our pro bono legal services, our business licensing and compliance program, and last but not least, our SEED program. Next slide, please. In all the meetings that we have, I always like to start out with our mission statement to remind people about our equity program. And our mission statement is to promote equity ownership and employment opportunities in the cannabis industry in order to decrease disparities in life outcomes for marginalized communities and to address the disproportionate impacts of the war on drugs in those communities. The department supports the mission of the Social Equity Program through establishing programming, benefits, and resources, which do include priority application processing, access to pro bono legal services, business licensing and compliance assistance, access to the SEED grant program, access to our fee waiver and our fee deferral program. Please note that the SEED grant and the fee deferral program benefits are limited based on the availability of resources and subject to requirements established in the rules and regs. Next slide, please. Now, our social equity program eligibility verification. The social equity program is available to individuals who are verified by the department as social equity individual applicants. Verified individuals must meet certain criteria as outlined on this slide. And please take a moment to just walk yourself through this, and all of this information is on our website. Next slide, please. The individual eligibility verification. The verification for the original period has closed, and approximately 1,600 individuals were verified through this process. To determine if you are in this group of 1,600, please log on to Excella and look under Account Management. The expanded criteria and the Phase 3 Retail Round 2 verification will be reopened at a later date. So please refer to cannabis.lacity.org to sign up for these announcements. That's very important to keep up with what's going on. Next slide, please. The entity verification. All social equity applicants will also need to go through a separate entity verification process to ensure that their business application meets the necessary equity share requirements, etc. These requirements will be discussed in further detail later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. Now, this chart are slides detailing the status of all the elements of the social equity program. Our application processing is currently available for select activity types. Our SEED grant program launched on 4/20. Our pro bono legal services are currently available for the first 200 qualified applicants from Phase 3 Retail Round 1. And the business licensing and compliance program is in development, and we plan to launch this in the summer of 2021. More details will be available soon, referring to fee waivers and fee deferrals. Slide. Priority application processing. Now, verified social equity applicants receive certain benefits, as I've mentioned before, related to application processing. When certain requirements are met, they are eligible for priority access to retail and delivery licenses, priority license application processing, and priority license renewal processing. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Assistant Executive Director, Jason Killeen, who will provide an overview of the temporary approval process.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Next slide, please. First, I would just like to remind everyone that DCR has resources to help applicants manage the process on our website at cannabis.lacity.org. To access these materials that are associated with the application and licensing process, please highlight the licensing option on the menu banner on the homepage and select from the phase, the topic, or program applicable to your inquiry. Here are a few examples of those resources that can be found under the licensing menu on cannabis.lacity.org. First, you can see the digital licensing map. This is a temporary approval workflow. The temporary approval workflow is one of the resources associated with the licensing process. We also have an information procedures bulletin, which can be found on the website. These information procedures bulletins provide information about how the processes work, what the applicant's responsibilities are, and what to expect as they navigate through the licensing process. And we also have how-to tutorial videos on the website to walk people through the DCR licensing portal and how to insert data or find data on their profiles or in their application records. Next slide, please. We also have some additional pre-application and temporary approval workflows. I'm going to briefly walk folks through the process. For new applicants, they start at the pre-application review workflow. This is where we do an eligibility determination and we do the land use review for initial compliance with Municipal Code Section 10502, which is the Cannabis Restrictions Ordinance. For Phase 3 Retail Run 1 applicants, part of the eligibility determination before they were invoiced and allowed to submit a temporary approval, this is what we did. We looked at whether or not the proposed business premises location was compliant, and we checked to make sure that all of the documentation was submitted before it was deemed eligible for further processing, and they were allowed to pay temporary approval fees. For new applicants, they pay a lower pre-application review fee of $597. And upon payment of the fee, we verify whether or not their proposed business premises location is compliant with Municipal Code Section 10502. If it is, we review to make sure that they have the requisite owners to apply for the activities that are associated with their pre-application. And ultimately, we either deem them eligible for further processing, whereby they're eligible to submit a temporary approval application and pay their temporary approval fees, or we deem that they're ineligible to submit a temporary approval application and their pre-application just ends at that point. Once an application is the temporary approval process, the applicant's responsibility is to upload the temporary approval documents. And once all of the temporary approval documents are submitted, the analyst is able to check them for consistency and completeness. And if all of the documents are submitted, we issue a notice of local compliance underway. Once we've issued the notice of local compliance underway, that gives the applicant the opportunity to submit their application to the state agencies, either for a provisional license or for an annual license. It enables the applicant to request initial inspections from the Department of Cannabis Regulation. And once they've completed that inspection, get an inspection from the fire department. And then the third piece is, once all of the documents are complete, we can begin our equity share review. Next slide, please. These slides show where applicants are in the temporary approval process. Out of the 200 applicants eligible for further processing, you can see that, oh, thank you. The prior slide had the list of the 200 applicants that are eligible for phase 3 round 1. For this slide, we're going to give a breakdown of where those phase 3 round 1 applicants are. To date, 63 of the 200 businesses have uploaded one or more of their temporary approval documents. 70% of the folks participating in phase 3 round 1 have not submitted the documents necessary to move forward in our process. So at this time, we're really focused on the 30% that have submitted the documentation. Of the 63, 46 have uploaded the minimum number of documents necessary to receive a status of local compliance underway, which also grants them a notice of local compliance underway, which allows them to enter the state application process. 22 of the 46 businesses that have a notice of local compliance underway have scheduled their initial DCR inspection. 18 of the 22 have passed their initial DCR inspection, and 3 of the phase 3 retail round 1 applicants have actually received temporary approval from the department. Next slide, please. For this slide, I'm just going to run through a few of the things that will hopefully help phase 3 retail round 1 applicants. Before submitting forms or documents to the department, please make sure that you review and read the bulletins and follow the directions listed on the forms. One of the most common errors is the forms are filled out incomplete, or they're incomplete, they're filled out incorrectly, or the documents are not consistent with one another. So if you provide operating agreements and you're showing that the owners and the folks who own either the equity in the LLC or the stock in the corporation, and then we look at your financial interest holder form and the owner's form, and those percentages and those owners are not the same, one of those documents is incorrect and needs to be corrected and resubmitted. DCR doesn't know which one is incorrect at that point in time, and it ultimately leads to delays in processing the application and reviewing additional documents. So please ensure that your information is consistent across all of the forms and documents that you submit, because if it's not consistent, the documents won't be deemed complete and they won't be moved along for further processing. All of the forms must be submitted, completed, and consistent to be eligible for a notice of local compliance underway. Once we've issued that notice of local compliance underway, the applicant may submit applications to the state agencies. They may request an initial inspection by our inspectors, and the DCR staff begins the equity share compliance review. Once we have copies of the corresponding state licenses, initial inspections are passed, and the equity share compliance review has been completed, the applicant is eligible to receive temporary approval. If they do not meet all of these requirements, temporary approval will not be issued. Next slide, please. So now I'm just going to briefly go through some of the various requirements for temporary approval. One of the requirements is for a certificate of occupancy to be received for retail activities. Some buildings predate building and safety issuing certificates of occupancy, therefore they're grandfathered in, and you may not need to get a certificate of occupancy. Other buildings have an occupancy, and building and safety may need to change the occupancy for you to operate a retail storefront business. For operators that are not operating in the commercial zone, please make sure that your certificate of occupancy matches your proposed use. And you can ask questions of building and safety to find out whether or not the existing use and occupancy would allow you to engage in retail storefront activities. Additionally, if you're engaging in any type of building permits, tenant improvements, or anything else, you should be reaching out to building and safety and possibly the fire department to make sure that you're pulling the necessary permits. Even if we issue temporary approval, if it turns out that you have not gotten the necessary permits, other agencies may take an enforcement action and require you to shut down while you navigate through the necessary permitting processes. Next slide, please. On this slide, we've got a couple of the screenshots of the various forms, as well as the equity share compliance checklist and the equity share review correction sheet. So as part of the equity share compliance, we're looking to make sure that you've provided the documents that are necessary to demonstrate that the social equity individual applicant owns the requisite equity share in the applicant entity. We need to make sure that all of the owners have submitted their SEP owner compliance attestations. Even the non-SEP social equity individual applicant owners must submit the attestations because they're attesting to, they understand that they're applying for a license that is a social equity license, and failure to comply with the social equity requirements under Municipal Code Section 10420 may preclude the DCR from renewing the license, issuing an annual license. It may result in the suspension or the revocation of a temporary approval previously issued. We're checking the ownership percentage requirements. We're also making sure that the ownership and disclosure requirements articulated in 10420 are met. Any equity share addendums that have to be added in order for somebody to be eligible to receive temporary approval must also be met. And then we're keeping records of what equity share documents have been deemed compliant, where we have questions, and providing, feedback on questions or additional information that we need in order to navigate through that equity share review. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a copy of the equity share correction checklist. Within this checklist, there's 5 different categories or sections where DCR may have comments associated with the equity share documents. We may have questions about unconditional ownership. Once we've reviewed the operating agreements, the financial ownership, interest holder forms, the ownership attestations, if we find discrepancies between the documents, or we find language where it looks like somebody does not currently own the requisite equity, that will result in questions from the department and a request for clarifications. We also have issues or questions associated with various policies, procedures that are articulated in operating agreements or articles of incorporation, successor language, and the municipal code requires the applicant to incorporate certain verbiage within their operating agreements. And if the required verbiage is not in the operating agreements, they're not compliant and will have to be updated. On the right-hand side of the screen is a communication that we receive from the state. Once an applicant has successfully submitted an application to the state, prior to the state issuing a provisional or annual application or a license, the state will reach out to DCR and ask DCR to confirm whether or not an applicant is in compliance. In compliance means that an applicant meets all of the requirements within our local ordinances. That can only be obtained once an annual license is issued by DCR. So currently, none of our applicants or licensees have a status of in compliance. The most common response to the state for folks that are in our pipeline who have either gotten a notice of local compliance underway or received temporary approval is local compliance underway. That means that you're working with DCR towards an annual license. And then the third choice is not in compliance. Not in compliance will be reported if an applicant is not in the DCR application process or licensure process, or if the information on the communication from the state does not match DCR's licensing records. For instance, if a phase 3 retail round 1 applicant applied for a license at a different location than what's associated with their DCR licensing record, that is not in compliance because it's not at the same address. If they apply for activities that are not on the record, that is not compliant because you're reporting a project to the state that is not consistent with the project that is before DCR. And then of course, if the applicant entity on the state application does not match the local record, it's not the same applicant. Therefore, that request is not in compliance. So you may be an applicant before DCR, but if you're submitting different information to the state, it could materially change the way DCR responds to a state inquiry, even if you feel that it's the same ownership group. If it's not the same applicant entity, same business address and same activities, you are not in compliance at the local level. Next slide, please. Here we have the initial inspection worksheet documents. These are the documents that the inspection team will go through with the applicant entity when we're ready to do our walkthrough. Currently, DCR is doing virtual walkthroughs of all of the facilities to meet the initial inspection requirements. If you have any questions, please reach out to your assigned analyst and you can get a copy of the initial inspection worksheet, and they can also answer any questions that you may have in preparation of your initial inspection. There are also additional resources available on DCR's website under the licensing section at cannabis.lacity.org. Next slide, please. Now I'm just going to briefly talk about application modifications. Some of our most frequently asked questions are about the modification process. We recommend that you review the modification workflow on our website, which is found under application procedures and resources. If you need to submit an application modification, you first need to file an intent. So you would notify DCR via our JOT form that you intend to file a modification request, and you identify what type of modification you're seeking. Once that has been registered, if it's something that DCR may be able to further consider, you will be asked to submit a formal modification record through the DCR licensing portal, which will be attached to the record that you're seeking to modify. You will be invoiced a $542 modification review fee. Your modification request is not deemed filed until the fee is paid. So if you submit a modification record and you're expecting and waiting for feedback and you have not paid the fee, it has not been deemed filed and you're not going to get feedback. And if the fee is not paid within 30 days, that modification request will be closed out and deemed abandoned due to unpaid fees. Once the fees are paid and the modification request has been deemed filed, DCR staff will begin working on it. As we work on it, there are two different paths. One, the analyst may respond and let you know that the modification request is eligible for further processing. You'll be asked to submit additional documents necessary to complete the modification request. And once all of the documents are submitted, any additional applicable fees are paid, and the forms and documents are reviewed for completeness, the request will be fully processed and the modification record will be updated to complete. The second path is we make a determination that the modification is ineligible for further consideration. And that can happen for a number of reasons. You may be requesting a relocation and that your proposed business premises address does not comply with Municipal Code Section 105. You may be submitting an ownership change request and the owners may not be eligible to be added to your record for one reason or another. You may be seeking to remove an owner, and for Phase 3 Retail Round 1 records, the eligible social equity individual applicant cannot be removed. So if you're seeking to remove the individual applicant who is the qualifying applicant for the Phase 3 Round 1 record, those will be denied. Other things such as legal business name changes and other things may be denied or deemed ineligible, especially if what is being filed isn't consistent with the required process. You can't modify a modification record, so the record submitted would be deemed ineligible. And if it's something that could be considered and you misfiled it, you'll have to go through and refile it again. Most modification requests do require us to reevaluate applications and coordinate with either state agencies or city agencies. In order to fully process those modification requests, you will also have to update your records with the corresponding state or city agencies. And part of getting everything updated and deemed complete and fully processed requires you to do those changes before everything can be fully applied to your DCR licensing portal. This process does take a long period of time. And to the extent that you're making material changes to the records, it will delay DCR's ability to move you forward in the application process, because you will have to resolve whatever outstanding changes associated with the modification request are before your temporary approval application moves forward. Next slide, please. Here are the common types of application modifications. The average processing time is 120 days from the time the modification fee is paid. Folks have to understand how averages work. We have certain modification requests that are processed very quickly. Removing non-owner contacts is a simple request, and those are typically processed within 10 calendar days from the date the fee is paid, if there are any applicable fees. That includes adding agents of service, adding law firms, adding neighborhood contacts, adding people in charge, removing people in charge, removing neighborhood contacts, doing any type of non-ownership change. Those are fairly quick changes. Adding a fictitious business name that has been registered with LA County, that is a fairly simple change. Those types of requests do not require additional forms to be changed or submitted. Therefore, they can be processed quickly. Those are bringing down the average processing times for the more complicated things like adding an activity. We have to do a land use review to determine whether or not that activity is compliant with your current location. We have to determine whether or not you're eligible to apply for that activity. Business premises relocations, those take a significant amount of time. Those could take 90 or more days for us to complete the land use review. For any of the applications that have a retail storefront component, those modification requests are reviewed in sequential order based on the order that they're deemed filed. And that's important because retail storefront businesses create buffers for other retail storefront businesses, and two businesses cannot be located within 700 feet of one another. So all of those requests are processed in the sequential order. Retail storefront can only be relocated in the same community plan area for which the request is filed. And DCR has one analyst who is assigned to doing all of these reviews, and they take time. They require us to clear various sensitive uses with local and state agencies. And to the extent that the state agencies do not provide us with the information necessary to move to the next modification record, it creates delays for everybody that's waiting for that determination to be made before we can move on to the next request. One of the other most common changes is the ownership change. Those do require additional document review. They do require additional equity share review for any social equity application. And first determining whether or not the change can be made, and then having folks submit updated documents and then reviewing those documents for completeness, and then having to send those documents back through the equity share review takes time. And DCR is prioritizing applicants that are not making changes to their application when it comes to equity share review. So if you do need to have your equity share documents re-reviewed for compliance, it will come after the applicants that are already in the queue for equity share review. That review is done. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Before I go on, I want to remind everybody that you are able to write in questions. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A icon where you can type in questions for tonight. So I wanted to let everybody know that they can do that. Okay, so moving on to business licensing and compliance assistance. Now, this program will provide social equity applicants with programming and training in the areas of state and local licensing requirements, commercial cannabis regulations, general business development, cannabis-specific business development, and workforce development. DCR has selected the following 5 vendors who will develop this curricula. We've selected High Demand Development, Los Angeles Metro Churches, North Star Alliances, Oaksterdam University, and Wadeco Business Center. Now, we're actively working with our vendors to create a state-of-the-art curricula with an expected rollout of this summer. We're very excited about this. Additional information will be released at our next commission meeting on May 20th, so please stay tuned. This program is the first iteration of the program, and we are going to expand it over the coming year. Next slide. Our fee deferral program. In April of 2021, the City Council approved DCR's rules and regs for the fee deferral and fee waiver programs. To date, DCR has made $250,000 available to verified social equity applicants through this fee deferral program, and additional fee deferral dollars will be made available as resources allow. In reference to our fee waiver program, DCR will make an additional $650,000 available for fee waivers. Fee waivers may be applied to social equity individual applicants for their eligibility verification fees. Individuals who submit a complete eligibility verification application, those are folks who will be able to get this fee waiver. More details will be forthcoming. Now, I would like to turn it over to Josh Mandel. He is the chair of the Los Angeles County Bar Association's Cannabis Law Section, who will discuss our pro bono legal services program.
Hi, thank you. My name is Josh Mandel. I'm an attorney at the law firm Ackerman. We are a national law firm with a cannabis practice. I am a founder and I'm the chairperson of the LA County Bar Association's Cannabis Section. So about 2 years ago, we formed or proposed to the Bar Association the formation of a dedicated cannabis section. We have more than 130 members who are attorneys within the Los Angeles area who are members of this section. And really, some of them are the most notable folks in Los Angeles. And of them, they're very experienced and knowledgeable about working with the DCR. We have developed, in partnership with the DCR, a pro bono program. It's administered by an organization called Smart Law. And what happens is there are forms that are available to you through the DCR where you can apply to have free legal services if you are a verified social equity applicant, as I believe everybody here probably is. And then there are, within the LA County Bar Association, attorneys who have signed up to be participants and offer their legal services. The services are limited in time. It's about 7 to 10 hours is kind of the scope. And then the attorneys who provide the free legal services to the applicants have different backgrounds and areas of expertise. So there's a place where applicants are able to identify what it is they're needing most urgently. And then there's a process of connecting the applicant with one of the attorneys who's signed up for to be a pro bono attorney. I myself am a part of it. My background is really in litigation as well as in some regulatory matters. There are other members who have specialties that are really dedicated more to corporate document formation, contract, things like that. I would just say that if you do sign up and you do get paired with an attorney, be diligent in communicating with the attorney and communicate with them in a way that allows them to really help you. So don't just blind copy the attorney on things, reach out, have communications, set some expectations. And I think that's it. The materials that the DCR has will be available to you. I'm jumping back into another Zoom that ends at 8 o'clock. So thank you for having me. And I hope that people do take advantage of this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Josh. We really appreciate your participation in this program. We appreciate your time tonight. If you would like to participate in the program, please fill out the survey found under the Social Equity Program menu on our website. And now I'm going to turn this presentation over to Elevate Impact LA, who will be providing more information concerning the recently launched SEED grant program. Take it away, Ms. Groves.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. It's an honor to be here tonight and doing this important work on behalf of the city of LA. By way of introduction, Elevate Impact was launched in 2018 to implement the City of Oakland's Social Equity Loan Program funded by city tax revenue, one of the very first of its kind in the nation. Since that time, we've expanded and now serve the City of Los Angeles, City of Sacramento, and the County of Mendocino. we are deploying close to 20 million in loan and grant funds to social equity entrepreneurs throughout California. I launched my own financial services career in 1986, where I worked in New York City on Wall Street at Credit Suisse and had the good fortune to meet many members of my team who helped us launch this program. Joining me on the call today is Rachel Bond, who we only recently learned grew up about 30 miles from each other in a very remote section of northern New Mexico. In total, we are a team of 11 individuals, including myself, with up to close to 300 years of aggregate experience working with social equity and cannabis entrepreneurs, as well as small businesses in California, the US, and internationally. Next slide, please. The City of Los Angeles' SEED program is funded by the Cannabis Equity Grant for Local Jurisdiction on behalf of the state of California, which provided $6 million in the year 2019 through 2020. We will be deploying this grant capital in 2 tranches, $5 million for SEED 1.0 and $1 million for SEED 2.0. We're working closely with Kat Packer, Dr. Imani Brown, and their team to execute this strategy. Next slide, please. For more information about the specifics of each program and how to submit a grant application, please visit our website, elevateimpactla.com, shown here. Next slide, please. I will now provide some details for both the SEED 1.0 and the SEED 2.0 program. SEED 1.0 will utilize $5 million of the $6 million in CEG funding to provide grants of $25,000 each to LA Phase 3 Retail Round 1 social equity individual applicants. Next slide, please. SEED 2.0 will utilize $1 million of the $6 million CEG funding to provide grants of up to $10,000 to each to the verified social equity individual applicants in 2 disbursements. Each applicant is eligible to receive $5,000 when the Department of Cannabis Revenue approves their pre-application for further processing. They can then receive an additional $5,000 for a total of $10,000 when they are eligible for a notice of local compliance underway. Next slide, please. This slide gives you a quick snapshot of how the money can be used by the entrepreneurs in accordance with CEG's identified expense categories, which include rent, lease payments, equipment, regulatory fees, legal, regulatory compliance, testing, furniture, fixtures, capital improvements, and workforce training. Next slide, please. It is very important to note that grant funds cannot be used for items such as unlicensed cannabis businesses, non-cannabis businesses that serve the industry, inventory, personal expenses, relending, or investing. Next slide, please. Grant disbursement. SEED grants will be dispersed on a first-come, first-served basis. SEED grant applicants must apply by August 18th of 2021. SEED grant funds not distributed by 90 days prior to the end of the city's CEG contract may be dispersed on a pro rata basis to eligible approved applicants who have applied by August 20th of 2021. Applicants who receive funds under SEED 1.0 are not eligible for SEED 2.0 and vice versa. Applicants who receive funds under SEED 2.0 are not eligible for SEED 1.0 funding. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to walk you through the 6-step grant disbursement process, which includes step 1, apply online, step 2, application review, step 3, grant approval, step 4, virtual signing, step 5, grant disbursement, and step 6, post-grant data tracking. Step 1, apply online. Applicants will be required to complete an online application. Paper applications will not be accepted. In addition, in order to verify that an applicant is indeed a verified social equity individual, the applicant will need to input their ACA reference number issued by the City of Los Angeles onto their application. We know that many of you are wondering how to locate your ACA reference number. There's a tutorial on the LA Cannabis website on the videos tutorials page, which will show you how to access your ACA reference number. Next slide. SEED tutorial videos. The DCR website has 3 video tutorials on the SEED program page. These videos will show you how to navigate the ElevateImpactLA.com website, give you an overview of the grant assessment documents, and go step by step through an application. Next slide. How to apply. You will also find this information on the ElevateImpactLA.com website. If you navigate to the How to Apply menu, you can see more information about how to apply. Next slide. This is what an application looks like. When applying, you have the ability to either complete the application all at once, or you can save your work by clicking Save Progress and come back to it later. If you want to save your work and return later, you will need to create a new user account first by clicking on the Login button. Next slide. Application review. Step 2. Once an application has been received, Elevate Impact staff will review the application for completeness. If anything has been missed, the applicant will receive an email requesting the missing information. We will also be available by phone if the applicant has questions. Next slide. Application review continued. If an application is complete, it will then be assessed by the Elevate Impact Committee. The next few slides will walk through the assessment process, but note that if an applicant does not submit a completed application, they will be coached by the Elevate Impact team on how to approve their application, and it can then be resubmitted. In all of the other cities we have worked in, an application has never been denied. Next slide. Grant assessment documents. The documents that we will assess include 1, a written budget narrative of how the funds will be used, 2, a budget or line item list of expenditures for the requested grant amount, 3, a business executive summary of only 3 to 5 pages, and 4, monthly expense projections for a 12-month period. These are the types of documents that are required by most traditional funding sources, such as banks or investors. Now I'd like to walk you through each one of these documents. Next slide. Written budget narrative of how the funds will be used. The written narrative describes how the grant funds will be used. This is basically a written explanation of your budget. We're going to require that you upload a budget spreadsheet for how the grant funds will be used, but we also need a qualitative or verbal description of each of your budget categories. Let's take a look at an example. Our example assumes that the applicant will be spending money in 5 areas: rent, licensing fees, legal assistance, regulatory compliance, and then finally, capital improvements. Your own budget categories and amounts will certainly differ. Using our example, if you're spending money on rent and you're allocating $3,000 to rent, you simply have to write, our monthly rent is $3,000 and we will use $3,000 of the grant funds for rent. If you're going to use part of the funds for licensing fees, you would simply write that you're going to use some of the grant funds for your state licensing fee, and you anticipate that the state licensing fee amount will be $6,000. Now, let's say you need help negotiating your partnership agreement, and you also want help developing your employee handbook. This may require that you go and get advice from an attorney. So you might want to allocate $5,000 to legal fees. Next, we all know that business insurance is a core cost associated with being in business. So you may have done some research and discovered that in order to purchase a business general liability insurance policy, that will cost you approximately $7,000. You would simply list that cost on your budget and describe what it's being used for. Finally, let's say that you need to add storage to your current location and that it will cost you $4,000. Simply explain that you anticipate adding that additional storage and the cost would be $4,000 in the category capital improvement costs. This is how we want you to lay out a written explanation of how you anticipate spending your grant funds. Next slide, please. Again, we would like you to submit your budget in a spreadsheet format like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. PDFs are a little bit more difficult for us to work with, so we do request that you submit the documents in Excel or Google Sheets. Now let's take a look at our budget example. As you can see, based upon the written narrative, the budget is simply a tabulation of all of the categories. So here we've entered that rent is $3,000, Licensing fees are $6,000. Legal assistance is $5,000. Regulatory compliance, which in this example is the estimated insurance cost, is $7,000. And finally, capital improvements to add a storage unit is $4,000. When you add all of these costs together, your total budget amount is $25,000. What is most important about your budget is that the total amount is equal to the grant amount that you're applying for. So, for example, if you're applying for a $5,000 grant, we would expect these budget categories to total up to a total budget of $5,000. Next slide. Monthly expense projections. The monthly expense projection is a document that requires that you upload an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet format. Again, PDFs are not the best way to do this. We would prefer the spreadsheet. One of the most critical aspects of running a business is making sure you do not run out of cash. One of the ways to ensure that you don't run out of cash is having an understanding of how much money you need to spend, not just all at once, but also over time. So what we would like for people to do is to create a monthly expense projection using our template. This document gives you the opportunity to lay out the budget in a time-sensitive manner. For example, if you're applying for $25,000 in grant funds and you're spending $3,000 in rent, do you want to spend the rent money in month 1, month 2, or month 3? Enter the month that you want to spend the rent on in the column of the month that you expect to pay it. Let's also assume that you will pay $6,000 of grant funds for your state licensing fees, or perhaps your state licensing fee isn't due until month 6. You would simply take that $6,000 and you would enter that amount in the month 6 column. Continuing with our illustration, let's say you're buying general liability insurance for $7,000, but you actually just paid that bill last month. In our example, it's an annual policy, so you probably wouldn't need to spend that $7,000 until month 12. And in our final illustration of the monthly expense projection, let's look at the capital improvements category. In our example, you want to create a $4,000 storage unit in your business location. If you actually want to build the unit in your business location, you will first have to work with an architect to design the storage and shelving plans. So you might want to spend months 1 and 2 designing the space, but you don't actually have to spend the money for the storage unit until month 3 because months 1 and 2 are in the design phase. Using this example, you would put the storage unit cost of $4,000 in the month 3 column. The last step of projecting your monthly expenses is to add all of your monthly expenses for each category or row across from month 1 to month 12, and then add the sum in the last column, column Q, and label it total year 1. Then add all of your expenses in column Q going from top to bottom so that the final column and the final row in column Q totals $25,000 for your grant. Again, the total expenditures in the final row and the final column should be a grant amount equal to the grant amount, which in our example is $25,000. Next slide. Business Executive Summary. The Business Executive Summary is a shortened version of your business plan. We want to understand more about the type of business you're running, how you anticipate acquiring customers, what type of products you're developing, and how you're going to market your services. We expect the Business Executive Summary to be a short document of only 3 to 5 pages. All of the questions that are outlined in this Business Executive Summary example may not apply to your business, but we want you to describe all that you can to the best of your ability. So let's walk through this document in more detail, and these business questions can be found on the Elevate Impact website. Section 1, the overview questions. This is where you enter the company information. This includes your company name, your website, your company business description in 50 words or less. And if you have a slogan or a tagline, this would be the place to enter that type of information. The next section is product questions. This section is specifically designed to help you describe the type of product that you're bringing to market. We want you to describe your product or service. Please write about the top features of your product and the benefits of your product and services that you're bringing to market. Then tell us how much money you will require setting up and developing your product. The next section is competition questions. We all know that being in the cannabis industry can be a very competitive marketplace. We just want to understand if you are aware of who your competition is and who your top 3 competitors are. And most importantly, how are you unique? The next section are the marketing and sales questions. So once you've developed your product, a critical question that all businesses have to ask is, how are you actually going to get the product in the hands of your customers? And we would like you to answer that question in this section. The next section addresses staff questions. A successful business often requires a team. We'd like to understand who is on your team, including your partners and consultants. If having a staff will cost you money or working with a consultant will cost you money, you have the opportunity to explain here who the individuals are and how much cash you will need to pay them. Next is the infrastructure questions section. These are really the physical attributes of your business that you will have to spend money on to help you set up your business. For example, you might have to spend money on construction to bring your facility into compliance, or you might have to purchase equipment, whether that's computer equipment, or it might even be packaging equipment. Other examples include security systems, phones, and leases. The next section is the compliance questions section. We all know that the cannabis industry is highly regulated, and there are costs associated with making sure that you stay in compliance. So the first question is, what type of cannabis business are you actually operating? Do you need to provide health insurance to your employees as part of your labor peace agreement? Do you need to purchase general liability insurance? Finally, staying in business requires action. So we would like for you to upload your action plan. This plan describes what you need to do next in order to be successful and to make sure that you are launching a long-term sustainable business. List out what you think the milestones are for yourself. These might include secure funding, create design plans, create plans to build out your space, purchase furniture, or even develop a logo. You have the opportunity to list all of your action items in this section, which we've labeled action plan questions. Next slide, please. Assessment checklist. Once you have submitted these documents as part of your application, we will review your application using this assessment checklist. Next slide, please. Step 3, grant approval. If, after review by the Elevate Impact Grant Committee, an applicant passes the assessment process, an email is sent to the applicant saying that they passed and they have now become an approved applicant. Again, if they do not pass, the entrepreneur will be coached on how to improve their application and they can then reapply. Next slide. Step 4, virtual signing. After approval, a grant agreement is created for that specific approved applicant, and the Elevate Impact staff will virtually meet with the applicant to review the grant documents, address any question, and verify the applicant's identity. The grant agreement will ask approved applicants to confirm that they understand the approved use of funds and to supply a non-binding budget outlining those expenses. After the approved applicant has reviewed and e-signed the documents, the City of LA will then electronically sign the documents. Next slide, please. Step 5, grant disbursement. Once all the signatures have been gathered, the approved applicant will create an account at Elevate Impact Funds where they can upload details for how they would like to receive the grant funds. Next slide. Post-grant data tracking. The California Equity Grant Agreement requires that we report to the state how entrepreneurs spent their grant funds. Therefore, grant recipients will be required to upload their budgets and receipts as evidence of grant expenditures. This is also an important coaching moment, as this will allow the Elevate Impact team to review actual expenditures versus budgeted items, examine discrepancies, and what can be done to improve management of the entrepreneur's business. With that, I would like to turn it back to Dr. Brown.
Thank you so much, Paula. On this slide, you'll see some important dates that we'd like to remind you about and make you aware of. As you know, the SEED grant program was launched on 420. Today, we are having our first webinar in the DCR Summer Series. The deadline to apply for the Seed Grant Program is Wednesday, April 18th, 2021. And just as a reminder, I would like to share with everybody that our Seed page on the DCR website, you can find our 3 tutorial videos that will describe how to navigate the website for Seed, how to assess the assessment documents, and how to fill out the application. The how to fill out the application is a step-by-step tutorial that will help you actually fill out the application and upload all of your documents. And I think these 3 videos will really assist you in completing your application and uploading it as soon as possible. Okay, now with that, I'd like to open it up for some question and answers. And we will begin the Q&A with some specific questions regarding our Seed Grant Program. And these are questions that people have written in. And so I'll just start at the top.
Dr. Brown, I'm having an alarm problem. If you could start with licensing questions, and I will be right back. My apologies.
Oh boy, okay. Number 17, this is for Jason. Can a delivery proposed location be in a second floor of a commercial building? Mr. Khalid?
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I've been trying to respond to the licensing related ones in writing.
Okay. Well,
so
maybe
for
we'll
this-
come back. You want to come back to that and go with question
No.
22? Or you okay?
There's nothing that precludes a cannabis business from operating on the second floor within DCR's regs. The critical thing is it needs to comply with Municipal Code Section 10502, and they also need to meet the rules and regulations requirements for commercial grade locks and video surveillance equipment at the proposed location. There's things about the use that they may need to vet with the Department of Building and Safety or the fire department and get the necessary permits from them to operate on the second floor, but there's nothing that inherently precludes somebody from operating on the second floor at DCR. And it's all kind of site by site, case by case, looking at zoning and looking at proximity to sensitive uses that would ultimately determine if it's appropriate business premises location.
Thank you, Jason. Question 18. What are the processing timeframes for each step of the workflow process?
It varies. You know, it comes down to, in general, applicants could navigate through the temporary approval process in 3 to 6 months. If they submit completed documents, the documents are consistent, and the applicant is responsive to department inquiries asking for additional information or documentation or asking for clarification when there's questions. But if there's not documents before us, if the applicant's not responsive, if folks are taking the full 30 days to pay their fees, then it's going to extend the period of time for us to move them along to the next step. But, you know, somebody who is diligent could navigate through the process within 3 to 6 months. And there's a lot of the processes that can be done in parallel. So if they're not doing things in a sequential order, if, you know, they're being responsive to the analyst doing the equity share review, they're being responsive to the inspection team, and they're working through the inspection process in parallel, and they're working through their state application process and getting the state what they need, there's nothing that would stop them or prevent them from getting temporary approval in 3 to 6 months.
Thank you. Next question. What steps occur first? Pre-application review process or application modification, business premises relocation?
You know, as previously discussed, you cannot modify a pre-application request. So pre-application requests come first for an individual applicant. They navigate through either an eligibility determination for phase 3 retail round 1 in the previous phases. For new applicants, they're going through the pre-application review process. Once they're deemed eligible, they have the opportunity to submit their temporary approval application, pay their temporary approval application fees. At that point, their temporary approval application is deemed filed, and then they have the ability to submit modification requests to make changes to that temporary approval application. Sometimes folks go through pre-app as a sole proprietor. When they get confirmation that they can move forward at that business premises location, they look to either convert to an LLC or a corporation, bring on additional owners. That would be the appropriate time to make a modification request.
Great. Okay. How long does it take for DCR to generate a delivery invoice after a successful submission of the pre-application for delivery non-storefront retail?
It could take 7 to 10 business days. It really depends on, holidays, unpaid days, when it gets submitted, how long it takes for the confirmation of payment to come through. But normally it's within 7 to 10 days. If you've submitted something and paid fees and you haven't seen the corresponding update that reflect that the fee has been paid in 7 to 10 days, please reach out to the department so we can take a look.
Okay. Next question. I paid application fees and used Zemas Radius Map and did not receive a message on my application. And how can I avoid this in the future?
There's not enough information there for me.
Right.
For that question, I would recommend reaching out to the department or your identified analyst. You can check on the status, the record status within the DCR licensing portal. If the record was deemed ineligible, you submitted a pre-app, it's not properly zoned, the record would be deemed ineligible and you'd get an email communication. And the
Alrighty.
email,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jason. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we correspond primarily with applicants and licensees through email. So, make sure you're checking your spam folders and marking DCR licensing as a safe email address, because that's where our communications come from.
Okay, next question. Originally, you were giving phase 3 round 2 applicants 3 months to find a location. So since you don't need to find a space ahead of time for this next round, will you be giving them unlimited time to find an appropriate space?
Not unlimited time. The code was amended to allow folks up to 1 year to submit a complete application. So once the lottery is conducted and the individuals are identified who are eligible to move forward as part of the phase 3 round 2, they will have 1 year to submit a complete temporary approval application. Of course, businesses have to be distanced from one another. So the applicants that, identify location, move through the pre-application review process, get peace of mind that they can move forward with that particular location and then submit their temporary approval, are going to have better opportunities to lock up a compliant location. If you wait until the end of the process, you may be left standing where you're unable to move forward because you can't find a compliant location, or you didn't give yourself enough time to navigate through the temporary approval process. And that could ultimately result in the abandonment of that application. As we get closer to actually implementing phase 3 round 1, more information will come out. The next step is going to be to open up another verification period for social equity individual applicants, which will hopefully open up later this fall. And then the code requires us to accept those applications, process those applications. And once we've done that, then we're able to do the lottery. And that won't happen, of course, until sometime in 2022.
Okay. I'm going to take a pro bono question. Where is the pro bono legal services upload signed and notarized in the authorization agreement? Where is it located? You can go on to our website at cannabis.lacity.org and go into the social equity page and then the drop-down menu for pro bono legal services, and you will find the survey and the authorization agreement there. Okay, let's move on to, and thank you, Mr. Killeen. Let's move on to some seed questions. I think that Ms. Groves is ready. Let's talk about some seed questions. How do I find out if I qualify, and what are the factors that determine who or how the funds are allocated?
Yes, so Seed 1.0 grants are only available for phase 3 Retail 1 applicants. Other verified social applicants may apply for Seed 2.0. You can also find out more information about the program on our website at Elevate Impact LA Also, the list of Phase 3 Retail 1 applicants that qualify can be found on the LA City website as well.
Okay. Unless you were one of the 200 in Phase 3 Retail Round 1 process, you can apply, right or wrong? Or can applications be done by social equity accepted applicants, one of the 1,600?
Sure. If you are a verified social equity individual applicant or one of the 1,600, then you are available to apply for the C.2.0 grant. You will be eligible to receive up to $10,000 after meeting the following milestones. Milestone 1, you can receive $5,000 when DCR deems your pre-application is eligible for further processing. And milestone 2, you can receive an additional $5,000 when you, the applicant, are eligible for a notice of local compliance underway.
Next question. Could you let me know my position number in the queue for the seed application?
Well, the good news is there's no queue for this program. Applicants will only receive funds after they submit an application and become approved. Approved applicants will receive further communications directly from Elevate Impact LA about how to complete the process. Questions regarding individual applications should be directed to elevateimpactla.com.
Next question. I have registered with the City of Los Angeles' social equity program, but I was never given a social equity license. I was wondering if I still can qualify for the SEED program.
Sure. A license is not required to apply for the SEED grant programs. Phase 3 Retail Round 1 social equity individual applicants deemed eligible for further processing are eligible for SEED 1.0 or $25,000. Verified social equity individual applicants eligible for SEED 2.0 upon meeting the following licensing milestones, which include milestone 1, you are eligible for $5,000 when DCR deems the pre-application eligible for further processing, and then you can get an additional $5,000 when you are eligible for a notice of local compliance underway. Again, if you fall into either one of these categories, please visit our website at elevateimpactla.com.
Next question, when will I receive funding?
Excellent question. So you will receive funding approximately 4 to 6 weeks after your application is completed and approved. Again, once you complete your application, it will be reviewed by the Elevate Impact staff. They will work with you to make sure that all of your documents meet the industry standard. And then once that has been completed and your underwriting is completed and your application is approved, you should receive grant funds within 4 to 6 weeks after that point.
Next question. Will we be assigned a person to help applicants go through and fill out the paperwork for both grants and licensing?
So you are responsible for filling out the grant application by yourself. However, you can contact the Elevate Impact LA staff about specific parts of the application. You can also use the video tutorials found both on the SEED website as well as the City of LA's website to help you navigate the application process. For licensing, please contact your assigned analyst for any specific questions.
Okay, another question. Why on the application did we have to put our name instead of our corporate name?
An excellent question. It's important to know that the SEED grant programs are only available for social equity individual applicants, not companies, but individuals. If your application is approved, these funds will be distributed directly to you as an individual. We want to make sure these resources are going to social equity applicants and not anyone else.
Okay, next question. How long should the budget narrative be?
The budget narrative is really meant to be a written explanation for how you plan to use your grant funds. A good narrative should be approximately 200 words.
Okay. Do we need to include dollar amounts in the budget narrative?
Absolutely. Really, the purpose of the budget narrative is to give you the opportunity to explain how you're using the grant funds and how you arrived at the assumptions around your numbers. Please include the line item dollar amounts in the narrative that link directly to the spreadsheet that you've submitted and explain to us how you came up with these dollar amounts.
What format do you want us to use for the budget?
Sure, we've actually provided a spreadsheet template on our website. And also, please do not upload a PDF for the budget. It needs to be an Excel or a Google Sheet so that we can make sure that the amounts total and the formulas are correct.
How big can the budget amount be?
I know we all want lots of money, but the budget amount should really be equal to the grant amount for which you qualify. So for example, if you qualify for a Seed 1.0 grant of $25,000, then your total budget should total $25,000. If you are qualifying for a Seed 2.0 grant for $5,000, then your budget should only total $5,000.
How much detail is required in the line item section for the description in the budget?
Great question. We're really looking for as much detail as possible. And what we're really talking about here is the numerical spreadsheet for the budget. For example, if you want to use the grant funds for marketing, please do not list all of the items in one line and under the grant amount, put $5,000. That's not giving us enough information. Instead, break down the marketing costs into subcategories, such as website, $1,000, weed map, $5,000 a month for 6 months, packaging, $2,000, $2,500, and then maybe in parentheses, put jars, labels, bags, etc. Also, equipment needs to be broken down into separate subcategories. If you have a quote, an estimate, or a screenshot, please feel free to upload that. It's not required, but it can be very helpful towards helping us understand your budget.
How do I know how much I qualify for?
Sure. Phase 3 retail round 1 applicants qualify for Seed 1.0, which is $25,000. All other verified social equity individual applicants qualified for Seed 1.0, which is up to $10,000. You can find your status by looking in Excel.
Okay. And what format should be used for the 12-month expense projections?
Sure. Excellent question. I would say that this is one area that some of our applicants have asked the most questions about. Please use the spreadsheet provided on the Elevate Impact LA website. We're looking to see how you will spend your money over time and how you will manage cash over time for the next year. We do not expect that all the funds will necessarily be spent in the first month. Also, dividing your budget line item by 12 and allocating the amount equally for each month is not necessarily a reflection of reality either. Really try to think through in what month you will actually be spending your cash, because cash expenditures can be very lumpy, and understanding that can go a long way towards helping you manage cash flow.
Okay. And how much detail should we provide in the business executive summary?
You know, the business executive summary is specifically for your business license and not for a general cannabis business. Also, please avail yourself of the business questions that are found on the Elevate Impact LA website and answer each question thoughtfully. 1 to 3 word responses are really not acceptable. 200 words per question to show you've really thought about the best plan for your business and how you execute is a more appropriate response. You know, you really want your plan to set you apart from all other businesses. Really toot your horn. What makes you different and special? This is really your company pitch.
Okay. Well, Paul, I want to thank you. That concludes our Q&A, and I appreciate your time tonight. I want to thank everybody for these questions, and I want to provide a few last updates before we conclude the evening. The department is in the process of administering its Spark program. Spark sessions are a virtual event dedicated to community feedback on specific topics, including licensing and regulation, the social equity program, corporate social responsibility, and community impact. The next Spark session will be discussing the social equity program, and it's scheduled for May 8th, 2021. Spark surveys and the Spark comment box are available starting April 20th, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. Next slide. Some up and coming events. The first event On this graphic is today's social equity program webinar. Our next event will be another social equity program webinar scheduled for Tuesday, July 13th from 6 to 8. DCR will be joined by our friends at the Los Angeles County Fire Department, Los Angeles Fire Department, Office of Finance, the county's Department of Public Health, and more. We will be hosting another multi-agency social equity program webinar on August 4th from 6 to 8. We hope that you'll be able to attend these events, but we want to remind you that if you cannot attend, all the events will be recorded and posted on the website as soon as possible. I want to thank everyone for making time today to get this program launched. I know that we faced frustrating delays exacerbated by a global pandemic. However, I feel confident that we have a path forward to deliver meaningful services to our social equity program participants. I appreciate your time this evening, and I look forward to connecting again. Just on a side note, I want to thank my team, the DCR team who helped put this together, Allison, Ethan, Catherine, Aaron, Raina, and Brittany. And I want to thank our Executive Director, Kat Packer, for her inspiration and vision for this summer series. So thank you all very much for your time.
Dr. Brown, before we conclude, there may be one or two additional questions that the director would like us to address.
Okay. Let's go to the Q&A.
The particular question I see flagged is, can people utilize the SEED grant to pay for expenses already paid, like previously paid DCR application fees?
That's an excellent question. In other cities that we have worked in, we have not allowed for past expenditures. You can't get grant funds or loan funds for past expenditures, and you can't get grant funds for past expenditures. That really is a policy question, and I would have to review that with Dr. Brown and her team. But I can just tell you by way of example, other cities have not allowed that. But if I could table that question and have an opportunity to review that with Dr. Brown and her team, and if we could come back to you, because I think that's a policy question.
Paula, just if I may add to the conversation, as previously discussed with the director, because payment of applicable DCR fees, state application fees, building and safety permit fees, those are all eligible under the grant. We would allow for folks to demonstrate payment of DCR fees or other fees that they've already incurred to be compliant with the expenditure requirements.
Okay, so we probably need to have a formal statement around that, Jason, and if I could work with your team to make sure that that's clear and clearly articulated, that would be great.
The licensing team can provide any payment verification that you may need to support.
Perfect, that's wonderful.
I think another question is, if a line item is not acceptable, will the application be denied?
No, we really view this as an iterative process to work with the entrepreneurs. Quite frankly, there are so many categories of expenses associated with launching a business and growing a business. And I'm sure that we can find an appropriate category or line item for your business for the expenditures of the grant fund. So we would work with you and through our coaching and entrepreneurial training process to find the right budget items for you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Jason?
Not for tonight. We'll work on, I've been trying to respond to as many of the licensing related questions as possible.
I'd like everybody to, okay. Well, anybody who didn't get their question answered, we try to answer all of them, but please know that all the questions and answers will be online and they'll be answered online. So you can go to our website and find the answers to all these questions. and some that came in late that we didn't get to, or, yes.
Yes, and I will say that there is a question box on the Elevate Impact LA website, and you're welcome to submit your questions there, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible.
Okay. Again, thank you all for your time. We look forward to our next webinar. And we're excited about our seed grant program and dispersing the $6 million to everybody. Thank you so much. Good night.